Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Samantha's Beauty Confessions. Today I'm doing a solo episode, and I'm going to be telling you a story about this crazy time in my life in 2020 whenever I got locked out of my Instagram account for 7 days. And y'all, I truly, truly thought my world was ending. I am not joking. I know that's a little bit dramatic to say now, but that's how I felt in the moment. So I thought that it would be fun to share this story with you, to let you know the lessons that I learned from it, how the experience affected me, and some different things that you all can do to ensure that this never happens to you in the future. So let's go ahead and get into the episode. Let's rewind time a little bit and go back to 2020. Now, the lockout happened in November of that year, but I think it's important to rewind a little bit further just to kind of set the mood or, the scene, if you will. So at this time, I know I've mentioned this before, but in the early days of my Instagram journey, I was quite literally living on the app. Whether I was on there posting or editing or engaging, whatever the case was, I was spending all of my free time on the app. Okay. And it's actually kind of crazy for me to think about now just because of like how different things are today. But anyway, that's what was going on then. And anytime that you're spending this much time on this application, you're going to get rewarded, right? And that's what was going on. So my page was growing at this rapid rate. Like, I think I would gain 1,000 or more followers a day on average, which is insane. And one day I was sitting down replying to one of my viral videos, and I got this little notification, and it said, "We restrict certain activity." Basically like telling me that, I couldn't comment that many times in a row. I think that at that time I was getting like thousands and thousands of comments on my posts, and I was replying to each one, and I was trying to do it like in this quick, rapid manner, trying to keep up with it, and it notified Instagram that I was doing it too quick. So they told me, I acknowledged it. I moved on. I know that a lot of people probably have seen this little pop-up before. Just like my friends and stuff have told me that they've gotten it. I think it's kind of common just, to get. But anyways, I didn't think anything about it. I just acknowledged it and went on about my business. Okay. And this happened to me a couple of different times. And then in November of that year, I got the same looking notification, but this one said something completely different. Okay. And I have it written down here in front of me so I can read it word for word. But this one says, "Try again later. Your account has been temporarily blocked from taking this action. Sharing your account with a service that helps you get more likes or followers goes against our community guidelines. This block will expire on 11/11/2020." And then it says, "Tell us if you think we made a mistake." And unlike the notifications that I had gotten prior to this, I did not go on about my business after seeing this one. It truly stopped me right in my tracks. It was basically notifying me that I was losing access to my account for the next 7 days. And during this time, I would be unable to post, to like, to comment, to do all of the things that I was used to doing for the past, close to 2 years at this point. And I think that it did let me like scroll through Instagram or like watch other people's stories. I just personally couldn't do any engaging in any manner. Okay. And ironically enough, the day after I got this notification, the day after I got this horrible news, I was leaving for a week-long vacation. Perfect timing, right? And I just want you to pause for a second and think about this. Like, really think about it. I had just gotten, some of the worst news, which I know, again, sounds dramatic, but truly it was, because at the end of the day, like, Instagram is my job, and it's how I make a majority of my money. And that was being like removed or taken away from me for the next 7 days, which in social media land is a really long time. And then at the same time that I'm receiving this news, I am about to leave for this trip that naturally, after getting this news, I no longer wanted to go on. And just like with anything else, like when something goes wrong in my life, I naturally want to try to troubleshoot it. So that's what I did. The first thing that I did was I went to Google and I typed in what had just been told to me in that notification. Luckily, I screenshotted it because I was like, what the heck is going on? So I typed that in and I was just hoping that there would be some article of a blogger or an influencer or somebody that knew how to reverse this. So I searched for probably an hour and I had no luck. So then I was like, okay, what can I do now? And the next thing I did was I reached out to a friend of mine who I thought could maybe like get me in, so to speak, with someone at Instagram to try to speak to a person and just reverse it that way. So I reached out to them and they informed me that they had also had this happen. And they told me that while you are able to scroll and view people's, posts and stories, if you accidentally double tap on something or leave a comment on something, that you will be restricted even longer than the 7-day period. They said that they actually got logged out of their account for 30 days because they kept accidentally liking something. So that was scary. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you don't think about it, but we all, or at least I do, I have this little like habit of just double tapping on stuff and not even really realizing that I'm doing it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't risk that. I'm already being logged out for 7 days. And again, yes, this all sounds super like first world problem-ish, but I was making money on Instagram at this time. And so I felt like, I don't know, it just felt very icky, I guess is a good way to say it. And after I hung up the phone with this person, like my level of unwell was drastically higher than it was before. And just because they were even like, there's nothing you can do, you just have to wait it out. So much so that the people that were in my life at this time were like, you have got to chill, take a step back, really look at how you're acting right now. Like, this is not the end of the world. There are so many other issues going on, which is true. And basically, they were all like, you need to chill. This will be good for you. And don't get me wrong, like those people were 100% correct. Like I can't even, now that I'm removed from the situation, I can only imagine how dramatic I was acting, truly. Like it's not right. But I felt very like, it felt very unfair to me, is a good word to use. And I think the reason that I had such a hard time accepting this is because Instagram had told me that I had used this outside app to get more likes and followers. And I knew that I had not done that. And so I just kept hoping that there was something I could do. There was someone I could get in touch with that could help me, like prove that that didn't happen. And then I'd get my account back. I could go on my trip and life would be good again, you know? That was my perfect scenario. But spoiler alert, that didn't happen. I wasn't able to talk to anybody, and I wasn't able to figure out a way to prove that I hadn't done what I was being accused of. So in that moment, I had a choice to make, right? I could either, number one, allow this to keep consuming my thoughts, allow this to completely take over and just ruin the next 7 days for me. And if that was the choice that I was going to make, I needed to basically cancel my trip and just stay at home by myself because I was not going to be an enjoyable person to be around during this time. I was just going to be like this blob of myself walking around just pissed off at the world. Or I could switch my mindset and go on this trip looking at this thing almost as like this blessing in disguise. And that's exactly what I decided to do. I decided to go on this trip to be present and in the moment and just take in the life around me that I had quite literally forgotten about for, 18 to 24 months prior to it. And I can still remember that first day, like feeling so, so weird. Like, again, I was used to having my phone in my hand, to scrolling through the app, to liking and engaging with stuff. And I didn't have that luxury in the moment. And it felt so strange. Whether we want to believe it or not, our phone is like a drug, truly. And it was no different for me. Like I felt lost without having that there. Now, yes, could I have scrolled through Instagram? 100%. But again, I didn't want to risk getting punished even longer. So I tried really hard to just be on my phone as little as possible during this time. But then by day 3, it started to feel refreshing. Like I was sleeping better. I felt happier. I was able to be more present. I wasn't waking up in the morning with this like tightness in my chest and this anxious feeling of like, what am I going to post today? I have to get something out there and I have to do it quickly. I was just free, it felt like, which again is really sad to say, but it's true. And then on day 6, the day before I could start posting again, I remember feeling this like, oh shit feeling. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to wake up tomorrow and start all of that over again. And like, I don't know if I really want to. It was kind of nice to have that break. And it kind of put things into perspective for me of like what's important, what isn't, the life outside of the app that I, again, quite literally was missing out on a large majority of because I was so consumed inside of this little screen in my hand. And it was a really like a really strange feeling because on one end, I knew the healthy thing to do would be to just continue living in this blissful state that I'd been in for the past week. But then on the other hand, I knew that, I had these goals for myself and that I was finally starting to reach those goals and, get the things that I had wanted for so long. And so I was like, I felt torn. And what I decided to do was I decided to get back on the apps. Spoiler alert, if y'all didn't know, but with a different mindset than I had before. Okay. So instead of spending every waking hour on Instagram, instead of replying to quite literally every single comment that was ever left on my page, I decided to go into it with a healthier mindset and to give myself specific hours to be on the app. Just like with anything else, to have time limits. And all that I could get done in those time limits would be done, and the stuff that I couldn't would be moved to the next day. Okay. And so that's what I did. And thankfully, I have been able to stick to that even up until today. I will say that I actually am a lot less on the apps than I used to be, even after getting home from that trip, just because over time, goals change and things shift a little bit. And, with Instagram and social media in general, there's these seasons, there's a growing season and a maintaining season and just kind of like a being season or whatever you want to call it. You don't always have to be this like machine pushing out multiple posts a day for the entirety of your life. If you want to, that's totally fine. But like that wasn't my journey. And so although this was a really crazy time in my life, I'm very thankful that it happened for this reason alone. Okay. And I want to wrap up today's episode by sharing a couple of really big lessons that I learned during this time so that you all can keep an eye out for them and hopefully never have to go through this emotional roller coaster that I was put through just a couple of years ago. So the first thing I learned is that the little notification that I kept ignoring that told me, we restrict certain activity, it goes against our guidelines, whatever it said, that notification is actually a sign that I should have been paying attention to. Okay. I should not have just tapped, okay, got it, whatever it said, and moved on with my life. I should have, taken it as a warning that like, hey, you need to slow down. Basically, what that notification means is that you are acting almost like a robot. That is why Instagram eventually thought that I had used the outside apps or services to grow my page and to increase my likes, is because I was replying at such a rapid rate and doing things at such a rapid rate that like it was only making sense to them that it would have been a robot. However, Instagram truly doesn't know me as a person, obviously, or they would know that I hyperfixate on things and that when I do something, I give it 1,000,000%, And so while it seemed like a robot, it wasn't. But basically, looking back at the situation now, I should have taken those as a warning sign to just pump the brakes, slow down, do things a little bit different, and not just ignore it and go on about my business. So if you are like me and you've ever seen that notification, especially if you start to see it more than once, please, please, please do what I did not do and take that as a warning sign so that you don't end up getting locked out like I did. Okay. The second lesson that I learned is not to put all of my eggs into one basket, and that basket being Instagram, right? Like, I didn't realize how dependent I had become on this app. I didn't realize that quite literally every single thing that I had done up until that point in my business was done through Instagram. And that, like, yes, Samantha's Beauty Confessions is my Instagram page, but I don't own that page. Instagram owns it. And all of that could be removed out from under me within a second if Instagram wanted to. And so that was really eye-opening for me, that like maybe I need to build an email list and a website and start utilizing other platforms just in case something like that does happen, so that I'll have other areas to continue to build my community, or to connect with my community, or to continue making the income that I was making on Instagram. Like, it's just really, really good to really try to grow on these other platforms just so that you have options. It's always good to have options, but truly the email list and the website, like those things are yours. Those are not the social media apps pages. Like, that's strictly yours. And if Instagram disappeared tomorrow, you would always have that email list to go back to, and people could always contact you through your website. So that's lesson number 2, part A, I guess, because there's a part B to this as well. And that is the verification feature on Instagram. Now, in 2020, that wasn't an option, okay? But I did mention that it said to tell us if you think we made a mistake on my notification. And believe me when I tell you that I told Instagram I thought they made a mistake. I submitted, who even knows how many forms I submitted, okay? But it was a lot. And I never got a response, ever. Not one single response. But now with the verified subscription, that's one of the perks. I'm always getting asked in my classes if I think it's worth it to pay for that. And my answer is always to think of it almost as like your car insurance. You don't need it until you do, but when you do need it, you're really, really glad that you have it. And had I had that subscription back then, I could have gotten at least a response within like 24 to 48 hours. And I'm not saying that the response would have changed anything. I probably still would have been logged out of my account, but just having the ability to speak to someone and to state my case and to just get some feedback on what was actually going on, other than just reading that tiny little sentence that I was given that quite literally was not accurate. I think that would have at least just made me feel better in a really confusing time. So if you don't have Meta Verified, maybe think about it, consider it. Just depends on, I guess, your goals with the app and where you are in your career and all of those things. But for me personally at that time, I think that would have made a big difference. And the third lesson that I learned is that I am more than the number at the top of my Instagram page, that we all are, and that there is so much life out there outside of Instagram to be living. That it is so important for us to take a step back, to get away from our phones for a second and just take that stuff in and embrace the moment, be in the moment, sit with your loved ones, do the things that make you happy, because one day you're going to wish that you did. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be 80 years old, like sitting in my backyard on my rocking chair, just like wishing I wouldn't have spent so much freaking time in this digital world that we're all addicted to today. I know that it's easier said than done. Again, I am on my phone quite a bit even today, but I have a lot stricter boundaries than I had 4 years ago. And I am so, so thankful that, while it felt like a really big world-ending event at the time, I really think it had to happen to me for a reason, for me to really see and believe that this is true, because for anyone who knows me, I am somebody that needs to quite literally be shaken to my core before I will wake up and realize something that's been trying to talk to me all along, you know? Kind of like with those notifications I talked about earlier. I kept ignoring them and ignoring them and ignoring them until finally Instagram was like, okay, you know what? We'll just lock you out. And that's what it took to wake me up. So I think that this was a big blessing in disguise for me and just truly changed the way that I think about life and business moving forward. And I don't know, like I just wanted to share this with you today because the other day I was driving to work and I remembered this situation and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've never talked about that on the podcast. I need to do that because I think that this topic is so relatable and hopefully none of y'all have had to go through it, but it is like interesting in my opinion to just hear all the craziness that goes on behind the scenes that sometimes, doesn't get put on social media. And I truly just don't think I've ever talked about this at all publicly. So I thought this was a perfect topic for today. And I hope that you all got something out of it. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you more than you know. And I will talk to you all again next Monday.